good evening sa inyong dalawa, Jerome and Brian, and thank you for your attendance for tonight. So, sa NatSci 22, which is agricultural biology, please always take note of the stream views that I have posted. So, just a while ago, I have posted the laboratory guide, and it's the laboratory exercise and also a video to show you or to explain to you what how to do the laboratory guide. So if you have questions, then just comment below. So going back, I also have posted a quiz to the last time. The quiz. So you just click this one to open the quiz and you answer and return it back to me. You just, maybe in your options as students answers, there's an option there where you can upload your answers. So I don't know your screen yet. So so for tonight, we will discuss about the second part of our introduction to biology, which is the characteristic of life. So we talked about last time the introduction to biology. So introduction to biology is very general, and again we will be talking about more of that to the next topic. So, and we will also talk about the scientific method. So we will just be quick as possible because I know the two of you are already expert on this subject, right?
Dili pa, ma'am. Dili, ma'am.
So you can see the screen, right? So
yes, ma'am, yes.
It's easy for us to understand living things, especially the characteristic of life, because we know by ourselves that we are living things, and we know the fact that we are made up of the basic unit, which is, we call it cell, and each cell reproduce. That's why we also have reproductive organs, which enable us to reproduce. So all based on universal genetic code, we call it DNA. So lahat tayo, we have DNA, or deoxyribonucleic acid, which is capable of growth and development, except for genetic problems. So some more common characteristics are: we use energy, we obtain and use materials to have energy, and we use energy to live and to respond to our metabolic activities in our body and so on. So we do work because of energy, and we respond to our environment. So we usually, like if it's cold or it's hot, so we are affected by the weather condition and all the surroundings in our environment. So we maintain a stable internal environment as well. So if there is an instance that our body itself is not stable or is not balanced, so that's time that we don't function well as a human or as a living things, and even other plants and animals. So as a group, living things evolve, and that is they change over time. So as I told you, human beings evolve. Like later your offspring are better than you. So the next generations supposedly or expectedly are better than the previous generations and the so on generations. So that is also true with plants and animals. So some more characteristic of organisms is the basic talaga is we are made up of cells, which are made up of cell membrane. So our cell, previously, if you already have your biology, right? And you remember, I don't know if you remember, but there was come a time, a theory of the cell. The first theory of the cell was without a membrane. It means it's not enclosed with like a skin surroundings. So now after the discovery of the microscope, and they found out the cell, they have seen the real cell inside the microscope. So they have found out the parts of the cell, and true, all cells have membrane. So dati, yun pa rin, it's just like before that they said that the earth was not brown, right? Have you heard of that?
Flat Earth.
Yes, ma'am.
Is earth round or not?
Spear. Spear man to.
Round, ma'am, round.
So how do you prove
Spear
that?
man siguro to, ma'am.
Ma'am,
So ang pag-prove nga round siya.
Kita na
nasa,
picture
ma'am,
satellite, ma'am.
So dati they thought that earth is just flat, no? Flat lang siya. So now scientists have proven that indeed cell or earth is really round. So some more facts about the cells. Do you know the smallest living unit of an organism?
Cell, ma'am.
Yes,
Cell.
exactly. And do you know something that is smaller than cell?
Atom.
Exactly, inside the nucleus, no? So cell
Ay,
itself, yes, contains as small as micron cells. It contains living material. We call it cytoplasm. So inside the cytoplasm are living cells parts surrounded by a membrane. That's why we call it the cell membrane. And this membrane is very important because it controls what enters and leaves the cell. No? So any foreign material that invades the cell are screened out by the membrane. And you will know more about the cell parts, the cell membrane, and different parts as we go on to the next topic. So another fascinating facts about cell is that it's highly organized as small as it is. So later on on our next lectures chapters, I will present to you the different functions of its different parts of the cell, no? And the powerhouse of the cells, like the nucleus, it has even a very amazing, for both plants and animals. It's the main function of the cell, which makes human things are living, or continue to live because of this function. So cells have parts called organelles. As you can see, these organelles are called ribosomes, cell membrane, cell wall, and so on. Like the chloroplast in plants. So chloroplast is you remember, it's the green pigment in plants, and it is being used in photosynthesis, right?
yes, ma'am.
So why is it green? Why
Ah,
red? Why not yellow? Right? So we have different pigments for plants, di ba? Maraming color ang plants. But why most leaves are green? It's because of the chloroplast. And why chloroplast is green? You remember? Why do you think?
wala.
Because
Unsa na, ma'am?
so the chloroplast is it's the green pigment because it absorbs all the colors except for green. So
Ah,
it's like color green because it's the only color that it reflects. So that's why it's green. And you will know later in the photosynthesis process and in the respiration process on the use of the green pigments in plants. So because plants have different wavelengths, you remember wavelengths, so it has different colors, and different colors have different functions to plants and animals. So as I have said a while ago, that we are affected by our environment. That is why we can say, like they say, being I don't know now kung anong term, but mga LGBT ba na? Yung mga ganon. Although these people are widely accepted now, but then they say that it's because of genetic, and they say because of environment. So what's truth about that? It's still debatable. It's still vague, no? Because it's partly true that it's really genetic, but they also say that through time, although you have that in your genes, kasi alam nyo, yung lalaki, di ba sa genes ninyo, meron kayong genetic genes ng both male and female, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You have always the tendency pag medyo pag na may environmental influence kayo, talagang madali kayong yes, madali kayong
Darn.
ma-influence. So ayo sag sure nga lalaki kay mo karon, ha? Hindi pa na sure talaga. Joke ra bitaw.
Si Rostom.
Ma'am.
After all the, so wala mo kabalupod ka mo pod. So anyway,
Yes, ma'am.
so we have two different kinds of cell. One kind is the prokaryotes. So by this time, you should be able to differentiate and always bear in mind the difference of prokaryote from the second types of cell, which is eukaryotes. So you remember this one in your previous lesson? So what is the difference?
Nasagupa na ako, ma'am, pero wala ko remember.
Dugay na kayo, ma'am. Nag-stop ko kuan eskwela.
Yeah, and you would say that maybe when you go for advanced studies, like after this, you will go for a master's degree or a PhD degree. And I would always encourage you to do that, especially when you go back to RNC to teach, or to go to other institution, or you just go to farming. So, but then again, if ever you go more on academic side, so you always remember things. So I used to remember this prokaryotes because it's simpler than eukaryotes. So they don't have nucleus, and it means membrane-bound organelles. So wala silang nucleus, and best example of this are the bacteria. So example of prokaryotes are bacteria because they don't have a nucleus. So eukaryotes naman, from the word eu, so you always remember the eu in eukaryotes and the nucleus. So these are this type of cells which has nucleus. This one. So this is the eukaryotic cell. And examples of this are the plants, animals, protists, fungi, except for virus. Virus actually don't have anything, no? They just invade the cell and invade the cell, and as if they just para silang mga
Inhibit, bleach.
yeah. They will just, multiply.
Parasite.
Parasite, yeah. They are just parasite. So, for bacteria, ganito lang kasimple ang bacteria. This one. So, and the rest of the kinds of organisms are already eukaryotes because they have nucleus. So remember the U, it's for the nucleus. So organisms are also grouped based on the number of cells. Remember that we grow taller, we grow bigger because not because the cells are like what we usually imagine that the cell will burst or become bigger. No, it is because the cells become many. The cell increase in number, not increase in size. Although sometimes in plants, like the cell of plants, they sometimes grow in size, cell size, but not so much for multicellular organisms like us. So we can be unicellular or multicellular. The cell could be unicellular if it is made up of course, one. And if multicellular, it's many. And it's very specialized. So cells are also very small. As I have said, the size of organisms is not based on the size, the increase in size, but the increase in the number. So this figure will show you why how to differentiate the different organisms line up. Wait lang ha. So as you can see here, the smallest in point 0.1. I'm not sure with the NM. How about you? Somewhat, ang UM is microns. Nanomicrons maybe. I'm not so sure. But
Ano?
nanomicrons, right? So
Yes.
from 0.1 to 1 kilometer, so it's actually hierarchy from very smallest to the largest organisms. As you can see here, like viruses or kaninga mga bacteria. This is a symbol of virus, and these are the smallest particles or organisms we can see. And we can see that the fly has a 1 centimeter cell or 1 centimeter number of cells, and followed by the rats and humans, and the biggest are the mammals, what do you call whales, you know. And do you know, are you aware that these whales are even smarter than human beings because of the brain size? Did you know that?
Hindi man siguro, ma'am.
Really? So i-verify mo, no? So you verify that, but because that is what scientists said, that the whales have bigger size of brain, and they are smarter than human beings. So in multicellular organisms, they can form cells and group of cells called tissues. So tissues are group of cells, and they are very organized based on their functions. So cells, tissues, organs, and systems and organisms. So like this is a molecule, cell, group of cells, organism, population, community, ecosystem, and biosphere. Not so clear, but anyway, there's in the next slides, you will see the different levels. So organisms reproduce to pass their genetic traits. So that's really human beings now have a lot of, like, because we have what you call specialized kind of brains. So unlike for other kingdoms, under kingdom of animals, so for the highest hierarchy or kingdom, So organisms exist, it's because to reproduce. So that's the only thing, that's the value of how animals live and even plants, and it's because to pass on their genetic traits. So until now, we maybe heard some very cultural, kailangan mag-asawa jud ka, kailangan magkaanak jud ka, nag-asawa na gani ka, pag gani kay uyab, no? Kailangan magkaasawa agad. Pero na naman siguro mo uyab, no? Daghan na
Wala,
kayo.
ma'am.
Pag sure lang.
Wala.
So,
Study first.
sobra na
Strict ang parents, ma'am.
sobra na po mag-study, kailangan mo graduate na jud mo, ha? So,
We love schooling.
kana lang jud. So,
Taba, pre.
so mo na no, para mapasa ang inyong kagwapo, that's the genetic traits, mapasa inyong lahi, kailangan jud mo manganak, no? So, magkaasawa na galing mo, pero kailangan pa jud magkaanak, no? Gasto na ba yung magkaanak karon? So even in some countries like where I've been to, in most of the Germans and most of the Spaniards, the Spanish don't really want to have kids. They prefer to have dogs rather than kids because of the the expenses. But for us, we have different cultures. So we exist in this world for that reason, right? To perpetuate. When we say perpetuate, para ipakatag ang lahi. So anyway, going back to the reproduction, we have two types, the sexual and the asexual. But for humans, we can never have sexual reproduction before. A sexual reproduction, we can never have like that. For most animals, we can have usually sexual reproduction lang, but by the technology that we have now, so asexual can also be done in both in plants and also in some animals. Not all, but with the technology, the kind of technology we have now, nothing is impossible already, even for human beings. In fact, if you have heard, there are already clone type of animals. You remember Dolly? Have you heard the Dolly sheep?
Dolphin, ma'am.
Really, that. Salida man yung mga.
Salida na, pre.
Basta ma-mention na po na, but not in this subject, but anyway, I'm going to mention that this is the first genetically modified clone animals, the Dolly sheep. So, wala na siya karon patay na, and it has been like banned now. Cloning humans and also animals is banned for now because of the cultural and spiritual or religious things. So, but with the technology that we have, it's really possible now. In fact, because I just heard, I have 3 kids already and I'm very prolific. So, managang jud ko kay para kay gasto ba magkaanak. So, but I have a friend who's been trying a lot just to have a baby, but I don't know why, and I don't understand why, kasi wala may diferensya sa ilang duha, pero ilan dyan sila magka-timing magkaanak. So I have known from her and from her OB-GYN na pwede test tube baby, no? Or artificial
Yes,
insemination.
nakoy kagila na, ma'am. Test tube baby.
Test tube talaga? Tarong
Yes, ma'am. Mahal ka kayo. As in, tarong siya, oh. Akong uncle, nangayong na anak.
So it should be the best baby, no? Okay. So dako na karon o baby pa?
Dako na, ma'am. Kuan na, murag 3 years old naman ata.
Okay.
3, 4.
Okay siya, pero worth million.
Million gyud, ma'am, nya. Kapila na sila nag-try, murag katulo.
Yes, anak yun na siya, no? So kamo gani, wa pa mo kabalo kung baog ba? O basing na may
Ma'am,
baby.
dili, ma'am. Wala yung may baby, pero kabalo nga healthy, ma'am.
Like sure, kaya basing bago pang umaminyo. So anyway, going back to the reproduction, so it must have two different, parent materials, no? An egg fertilized by the sperm to make it a zygote. So it should be male and female for sex. This is for sexual reproduction, no? So the egg and the sperm, egg from the female and the sperm from the male. So to form a zygote, zygote means the fertilized egg and sperm. So this will create an offspring which is totally different from parents. Why do you think so? Why they say that it should be the same of the parent material, right? But it becomes different. Why?
Duha naman guna siya kakuan, ma'am. Genes ba?
Yes, exactly. So we will also talk more about that on how the different genetic materials are being, incorporated and selected properly. So the second type of reproduction is the asexual reproduction, which involves single organism or cell and then divides into offspring, which is very identical to parents. So as I have asked earlier, sexual have different genetic it's unidentical from the parent because they involve two cell already and genetic materials. But for asexual reproduction, it only involves one cell which divide or which is being regenerated in some other organism. So that's the asex. So most of the asexual reproduction actually are identical. So pareho lang na sila. So even I will just give you example in advance. Example in advance, like if you notice, what? I'm running out of time. Anyway, so ako. So yeah, so that's for the asexual reproduction. So example na yung ang mangosteen, it's actually sexual reproduction, but then it has an identical, most of the mangosteen seedlings are just identical. Kahit na itanim mo siya ng seeds, but still identical to the mother plant because it has a nuclear identical. This is an example wherein meron siyang nuclear tissues that usually form into seedling. That's why mostly are identical. And there are so many types of like that. So this mangosteen is just an example of apomixis. We call it apomectic. So reproduction cells have the ability to reproduce. All species have the ability to reproduce except lang sa mga baog. But although being to reproduce for living things is a very important asset, although it's not really essential to survival, but it's really essential for the species to be not extinct, no? So para dili ma-extinct inyong mga lahi, magbinyo yun mo o magparami.
Yes, ma'am.
Cells have genetic code, and we know that through our genetic makeup or DNA, and it looks like this. So we call it DNA, again, deoxyribonucleic acid, which carries the genetic code. The thing, that's why we look like this, we act like this, and so on. Then all organisms have DNA, of course. And these are made up of proteins that make up cells and do everything for the physical makeup. So organisms also grow and develop, like the cycle of the frog, no? From eggs, they become tadpole, and they develop and form into metamorph and into an adult. So insects also have a cycle like that. So they grow and develop. Like this one, organism grow by producing more cells and by cell enlargement. So that's what I am saying to you, that some like for insects, no, they go by, and most plants, they go by cell enlargement. And organism also develop as they mature into an adult organism. So growth, when we say growth, it's the result of cell division and both cell enlargement. So cell division is the formation of the two cells from pre-existing cells. So they just divide. So we will talk about a lot of cell division before when we talk about genetic. So new cells enlarge as they mature. So when it's mature enough, then that's the time they grow. When a cell grows to a size where its surface area isn't big enough for its volume, then the cell divides. So that's how growth occurs. So when I asked you, how does growth occur? So this should be your answer. So how is development done? So this is a process wherein if an adult organism arise, or we call it arise, or form into a new type of individual or organism. So we call it development. In this instant, repeated cell division and cell differentiation takes place. So it's different from growth kasi growth both involves cell increase and cell enlargement. But for development, there's cell division and cell differentiation. When we say cell differentiation, the cell will form into another kind of cell. So cell also require food and energy. That's why we call it respiration. So, and each living things require food. So we have discussed, Brian, last time what are autotrophs, photoautotrophs, and chemoautotrophs. So lahat ng organism which make their own food, plants, bacteria, are autotrophs, and these are classified as photo or chemoautotrophs. If they use sunlight for photosynthesis, especially plants, these are photoautotrophs. And if they use chemicals like iron, sulfur, these are called chemoautotrophs, like some algae and some other plants like this pitcher plant, and also some bacteria. So another type, autotrophs and heterotrophs are the two different types. And under heterotrophs are herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores. But heterotrophs, differentiated from autotrophs, cannot make their own food. And they must consume other organisms, both animals or plants. So if they eat plants, herbivores. But if they eat meat, carnivores. And if they both eat plants and animals, they are omnivores. So for insects, where do you think insects belong? Are they heterotrophs or autotrophs?
Depende guro sa kuan ma'am, insect.
Example sa insekto. Insect. Insect
Ano siguro ng
Sa kuan ma'am?
insekto, ma'am? Carnivore mo na sila, ma'am.
Kay naman goy carnivore ma'am, napoy herbivore.
Yes, exactly. You're all right. Very good for that. So, for instance, like ang say insect inyong nahibalaan?
Ang carnivore ma'am kaning kuan, dragonfly.
Really? I don't know that. But
Predator man siya.
Dragonfly, kuan ba na?
Alindano ba? Predator man na. Kaon naglamok.
Pati ang kuan. Oh, kaon mo
Kaning
nagbusa-busa.
yes.
Praying mantis.
Ants.
Most insects also are herbivores. They eat plants, no? That's why they become pests.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so going another um characteristic of life is we are capable of metabolism. So what do we mean by metabolism? It's all the chemical reactions in organisms. So in our body, inside our body, we require energy for metabolism. There is like we have different organs, like for humans example, we have different organs, like for reproductive organs, for digestive organs. So in the digestion itself, so metabolism occurs. But for plants, sunlight is the ultimate energy for life on Earth. For plants, but all humans and animals alike also depend on sunlight for the fact that we depend on plants for our food. So this is the usual and the only photosynthesis reaction for plants, no? Wherein the carbon dioxide with water and these are trapped with the presence of light energy. These are formed into sugar and oxygen. So you should be able to master this equation already. So another part of cellular metabolism is the cellular respiration, wherein cells release the chemical energy stored in food. So inside the plants, inside the animal cells, respiration occur. So please don't mix up respiration with transpiration. Okay, respiration is the metabolic activity of all living organism, whilst transpiration, the transpiration, transpiration, is organism respond to stimuli, and we all respond to temperature, as I have said, if it's hot or cold, water, food supplies, etc., in order to survive and reproduce. And with our responsiveness, we respond to stimuli in the external environment. And we can even detect and respond to changes in light like darkness or so bright, heat, sound, and chemical and mechanical contact. Even smoke, we can even notice, no? And we coordinate its responses. So that's how complex is our body system. So speaking of body system, we also is capable of homeostasis, keeping the internal environment, keeping the entire, keeping the internal environment of the cell or organism within the ranges required for life. So meaning stable and balance. So the pH, the temperature, the water balance is, and others, we call it homeostasis. So if anything in our body is not balanced, then we get sick and we eventually die. So that's homeostasis. And do you know that the thing that keeps us balanced is actually the smallest part in our ear, inside our ear. So that's how we keep balance with our body. You know that?
Wala, ma'am. Unsa na, ma'am?
I also forgot.
Oo, ma'am. Medyo nakakuan ko na, ma'am.
Basta ang ear na to.
Kung rin may fluid.
Sa part. Right sa ear. So living things evolve. So we don't know mas mo gwapo pa man no after 10 years or after dekada. So groups of organisms
Salamat, ma'am.
change over time. I don't know ha kung mas mo gwapo o ambot lang.
Naiwit dito sa evolution, pre.
Ingon ba ya ako nga mas mo gwapo ha? So gwapo na jud mo. So change over time in order to survive with changing environments. Like as I have mentioned before, like this pandemic is also another instance wherein we try to survive as human beings. Like last time we have the swine flu and now we have this pandemic. So survival. So hopefully we all always keep safe, and that's why we have this online class, and because of this changing environment that we have now. So fossil records show changes in groups of organisms, no? So when scientists they dig something like kaning mga fossils, mga kalabira, diha na mahibalan, that is the proof, that is their proof that ang skull nato, our teeth, and everything is changing, no? And we also evolve to the type of environment we have. And that's, we call it the process of evolution. So favorable characteristics are selected for and passed on to offspring. So we call this adaptation. So when the environment is favorable for your characteristic, then you survive, and these are driven by natural selection or survival of the fittest. And life is also organized into levels. We call it atoms, molecules, organelles, and then cells, where life starts here. So actually, may mas maliit pa na cell, which is atom, but then when you say basic unit of life, it's actually or cell. And then next level is tissues, organ system, and that's why we become organism. So after an organism is a member of a population is a member of community, and then we go by ecosystem, and the earth is our biosphere. So this is how is the molecule in the form of ATP, and the organelle, the cell, tissue, organ, and the organism, population, community, biosphere. So that's all for, I think we are done with the characteristic of life. So I thought we could finish the scientific method, but maybe next time. So if you have questions, you may raise your question now. It's almost 7, and I also have another class at 7.
Ma'am.
So thank you very
Thank
much.
you, ma'am.
You have any
Thank you. Wala, ma'am. Klaro kayo.
klaro, no?
Ma'am, nadawat ni mo tong gisid na ko, ma'am.